Okay, we're live. Welcome to Artcasters, episode 200. 300. I just said 200.
Wow.
389. I was going to short us by about 100. So you can see how good I am at math.
That's some tough math to do on the fly.
Yeah, exactly. That's why people trust me with their finances. Anyhow, this should be a really exciting episode. We have a return of a guest who's been on the show for a long time, good friend of mine. But before we introduce our guest, we'll just make the rounds and let everybody know where to find our stuff. So I guess we'll start with me. You're on my channel. So if you haven't yet, hit subscribe, hit the bell so you get notifications when we're about to go live and all that fun stuff. And if you haven't yet, please consider picking up Jacob's Apartment or Two Stories, my two graphic novels that are currently out at bookstores online everywhere. And maybe go to your local library and request that they carry it. Scott, where can everybody find your stuff and your new videos?
For the new videos, you can go to my YouTube channel. Just search Circworks Art Labs on YouTube. I just put up a new video this week where I'm diving into, we're getting close to the Halloween season. So if any of you guys, if you were around in the 70s and 80s, you may remember this company Imagineering, not the Disney one, but they used to make all these crazy special effects makeup. And so what I've done is I've taken all this inspiration. I've created my very own version of what something like that would look like if they were still making it today. So I go through the whole process. I analyze all the different products they had and everything, and I recreate not only the packaging, but an all new product in the spirit of this Imagineering company. And so it's super fun. So definitely check out that video. Also, you can go to my website at circworks.com, where I have digital products for making comics. I also have my own comic book, Young and the Dead. It's a kids versus zombie adventure story. Just think Goonies meets Night of the Living Dead if you're into like 80s nostalgia. Kids, you know, like Goonies, Monster Squad, all that kind of stuff. You'll love it. So definitely check that stuff out.
I love it. And we got Keeman joining us in chats. How's it going, Keeman?
Hey, Keeman.
All right, Corey, where can everybody find your stuff?
Well, as the weather turns colder, I think that everybody needs to get hoodies. So
it's still summer where I am.
Yeah, well, it's already getting colder. I poured $1,500 worth of concrete 30 minutes before it rained for 12 hours yesterday. So so the weather's not cooperating with me, and because of that, I'm wearing a Go Make Stuff hoodie. And so if you like making stuff, then you should go make stuff as well, and go to CoreyKerr.com and get the Go Make Stuff hoodie or anything else that you want. So that's where you can find my stuff.
I love it. And Corey, you're wearing one. Are they comfortable?
Yeah, I like them. They're pretty warm, and they're not as stretchy as some hoodies. And so I'd get it true to size or one size up. But yeah, I like it. I wear it all the time. It's great.
Awesome. And the print looks great on there, so that's good. That's good. It's battle tested.
Yeah.
All right.
Good job.
I also would recommend, as it's getting, colder out there, to also consider getting mugs from Corey as well.
There are also mugs.
Yeah, he has some pretty rad mugs. And
I'm here for all your cold winter needs.
Yeah, he's got all the things. Yeah.
I'll come and cuddle you in your home at night.
I like it. It's like a virtual cuddle from Corey, really. So speaking of virtual cuddles, many virtual cuddles go out to Gary Hodges, who just joined us in the chat.
Hey, Gary.
Hey, Gary.
This stream got really weird for the last 2 minutes.
That's right. It's called a cuddle stream.
The cuddle stream. All right.
We're going to start doing ASMR.
I love it. We don't need to do ASMR because we have the great voice of my good friend Chris Kawagiwa, illustrator, cartoonist, sometimes animator, sometimes everything. Like kind of a jack of all trades in when it comes to graphic design and illustration. Chris, where can everybody check out your stuff?
You can find most of my stuff under that moniker there, Sketchboy01. And my wife and I do this thing called Kitten Rivet, so we kind of combine our two things together. So we have an Etsy store and stuff like that there. I'm going to edit my headline because you can also look up chriskawagiwa.com, but that's a lot of letters. So you can just look up Sketchboy01. That's probably the easiest way to find things.
Nice. And your website is linked in the show notes below too. In case
Great.
People are having trouble with that.
Yeah.
And you guys should check out Kit and Rivet because Christina, Chris's wife, is incredibly talented as well, and they make really cool products. So check that out. Cool. So I wanted to have Chris back on the show because it's been a while since we've had him on, and also because I thought that I just had to like crash illustrate a kid's book in like a week. And
I saw that. That was so fast. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was like my wife and I kind of working together on it. And it was a lot of work. But what was dawning on me as I was working on it was like the uniqueness of sequential narratives and like how that's a little different than working on illustrations, where I also kind of did some t-shirt designs and stuff for some clients. And it was just a different part of my brain that's being accessed when I'm working on those two different things. And I was realizing like we all kind of do that. Like we all kind of work in these split mediums, both sequential and then I guess what Chris kind of phrased as like key art. And Chris, you're really good at navigating those two things. And so I thought that would be a really fun topic for anybody who's like watching who hasn't really delved into sequential art, who's maybe just done single images, or people who've done mostly sequential art and haven't really done like a lot of like single illustrations. I thought it would be really interesting to kind of dig into it. So I guess like my first question, and this can go around, but I want to start with Chris, is what did you start with? Did you start working sequentially, or did you start working with single images? And then after that, kind of how you well, let's get into that first. Which you started.
I'm pretty sure we all started with the single images, right? I think like anything narrative is something you kind of learn as you go. That I mean, you might have read them, you might have read comics, or you might have like watched animation, or read comic strips. But when you first draw with a crayon, you're drawing a moment in time, right? Like a character or something you saw.
Yeah.
I'm going way back. It's not even like professional stuff, but I think that's where you start, is like being able to encapsulate a moment or an idea in one single image. And then to make it sequential is far more complex because it's a time-based thing. And now it's kind of like guiding the reader or the person that's interacting with your artwork to like understand what's happening in sequence. That's even before getting into books where you have like a page turn.
Yeah.
It's like an extra level. I think comics get even more in-depth when you have panel layouts and then, image and top of text. So yeah, I think everything started with trying to be an illustrator, which is more focused on single images.
Yeah.
I think when I was in college, I wanted to be an animator, but I didn't realize Long Beach at the time didn't have an animation program.
Yeah, now they do, but now they're like a school of art. Like they got all cool when we left. Rick's the chair.
It's great. I know. As soon as the year we left, I'm like, oh, they have a Starbucks in the library now. Great. And they have a rock wall in the gym as we're leaving, and animation started up as we were on our way out. The last year, I think.
Yeah.
Good for the next generation. But got a little jealous, but I'm happy with illustration as a career choice because that's kind of where I've been able to focus and make a lot of my career. And it really is kind of split half and half because I do storyboarding for music videos, TVs, commercials.
Yeah.
And key art. I say that because I work a lot in entertainment stuff now. And I think that's kind of more like just single individual art. I don't know if everything would be considered key art, but key art is specifically stuff that's like posters for movies, that thing that becomes like the main image for whatever property that you're working on.
Yeah.
So, that's I find myself my foot in exactly half and half in those worlds, and they're totally, like you said, totally different muscles that you exercise when you're working on them.
Yeah, I think that's why it's such a good topic to kind of have you get into. Well, what about you, Scott, and you, Corey? I'm guessing most of us started single, but
Well, yeah, I think Chris hit the nail on the head with that. But I mean, I remember getting into comics pretty early on, but even those were almost single images because I might start, there might be a page with some panels, and then that's about as far as I got before I got bored and I started a different page with some panels. So it just, I mean, obviously comics, just understanding the language and everything just takes so long. And I mean, it's just, it's a commitment, or even like being introduced to like strip cartoons where it's like 4 panels or something like that. But yeah, I think Chris is correct in that I don't know too many people whose first thing they ever drew was a comic.
Yeah,
I guess it could happen, but that might be the exception to the rule.
Yeah, I drew my first sequential stuff when I was 32.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Wow. Unless you're like a prodigy that understands these things, like that's just how you communicate.
Yeah. So yeah,
it's a totally different beast. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember, drawing. I think it was a cover of a Deadpool comic back in the day, and I did a little single illustrations here or there, but I didn't do anything sequential until I was into my 30s. So
yeah, I think for me it was like I did a lot of weird things as a kid that I think signal cartooning. Like one was, and I'm sure maybe some of us have memories of this, but like when I was really little, just learning how to draw, like really little, like maybe like 3 or 4 or something, I'd draw like 2 tanks like shooting at each other, but then I'd draw like the bullet as it was going, and then I'd like scribble the explosion on the tank. Like the drawing itself was like alive.
I think that was
live
like
animation,
a game.
right?
I remember doing that sort of game with other kids or something like.
Well, this was just me alone.
Here's the real question.
Poor Josh.
Here's the real question. Did you make the noises?
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Because I remember, I don't know what I saw, but I saw something, and I was maybe a little older, but and somebody turned their pencil for like an overhand grip to like get that kind of like softer edge.
Yeah.
And then I just drew like battleships with like soft edge reflections for like forever,
Yeah.
And I was just like, yeah. And then I would always like make all the noises of the rockets and the bullets and the cannons and yeah.
So there's a bit of like, I think even when we're young, there's a bit of a desire to see a drawing come to life.
Oh, for sure.
And I definitely did some like little crappy like kids books. I had one in particular that I still would love to do seriously. That was called like the Sock Family, and it was all about a family of socks, lost socks that like lived in like a mouse hole
pairs
for some reason.
There's
in a house, yeah. But anyhow, but yeah, like the seriously tackling sequential work didn't really happen till Chris, you and I were in college, and I think I more seriously attempted about that time. And when I did, I was up for a surprise. So I wanted to get into, before we get into sequential, since we all started with single images or key art, what are the considerations that you think are really important for like a good piece of key art? I mean, I guess we're going to get into just very quick, like I know that could be, I mean, like for instance, Chris, you and I, we worked on our BFAs, and like half of what we learned, like 3 or 4 years of that, was just studying composition and what makes things effectively work. So it's like it's not an answer we can easily answer, but I figure try a bullet point.
In 30 seconds or less, tell me the solution to the Middle East conflicts.
Well, what are the things like when you get a job from a client that's a single image? What are the key things you're kind of thinking about trying to express when you only have one shot? You have one image to express it all in.
Mm-hmm. I think, like, interestingly, like the process, even though you end up with one image, you make 1,000, which is really funny because I think we can talk about it pretty soon, but not yet. There's this poster that we worked on that the final image is only one thing, but literally we worked on it for like a year, and there's hundreds of ideas that we put out there. And in a sense, it's almost like you're trying to figure out what the story is and how much can you pack into one image with all those things in mind, right? And this is like, having to work with the client and their bosses and like the showrunners, and everybody has an opinion and trying to figure out like, well, we want this person to be this. The focus of this movie is this, but we don't want to alienate this group, and that's, like a huge challenge to making it just one image. Whereas comics is like, well, you have many opportunities. You can do it wrong, but there's like 100 images that you're telling.
Yeah.
Whereas a poster is just one.
Right? I have a question. So with the stuff you're doing, assuming you're doing doing what I think you're doing, so all these images, when you say it's one image, are you only using one image, or are we kind of rotating different images around based on the audience? Because I know certain things appeal. Like if you sit there and watch, turn on a streaming service, I might get different images than my girlfriend gets.
Right, exactly. I discovered that when I started working in key art for Netflix and streaming, is I didn't realize that just like YouTube, everybody has their own version of it, right? Like the algorithm knows what your tastes are and knows what you tend to click on, where you hover. So streaming does the same thing because they're aware of your behavior and where you scroll, where you click past. Like this person likes big heads and this person likes this actor. And if they were like a co-star in this one movie, they're going to push that person. They're like, this person really likes Paul Rudd. We're going to put him in here, even just because, he's not the star.
For anyone watching, that's why you in particular out there who are watching, you saw this thumbnail as a nude. That you're the only person. You're the only person.
Nobody else. Josh, you said that was just
catering to you. Anyhow, sorry. Go ahead.
But yeah, that experience is different, for streaming, especially because it's such a uniquely catered to the audience type of artwork. But the other thing I have worked on is stuff that's like a movie poster type things, where the stuff that's going to be on bus shelters and like on a side of a building is just one image. So the stuff that we do only gets seen by like a small group of the creators, which is unfortunate. There's a lot of amazing ideas that never get seen. It breaks my heart that there's amazing things out there that just didn't, even if it was incredible genius, just like, oh, we already have something like that, or it looks just like this thing, or the producer is like, oh, I just don't like blue, or something, and just doesn't decide to go with it,
I remember an era where like Ollie Moss was kind of like the big poster guy, and it like had blown up from t-shirts, became like the big kind of go-to poster guy. And I remember he did a blog once showing all of the stuff he got hired to do by people who were just like, man, we love your posters, the concepts are so high concept and simple and great, do that for our thing. And he'd do it, and he'd provide them with exactly like a beautiful Ollie Moss design that would just probably sell like hotcakes. And then they'd be like, never mind. And like they paid for some it, but never use it. And it's like, so he had a blog of just all these unused, like, but paid for, posters that were like a million times better than the final product. And that was like one of the first times where it dawned on me, like, oh my gosh, it's kind of like when you find out about like the backlog of like stuff at Disney of all the Imagineering stuff that didn't go forward. That's just in like some vaults, like the Ark of the Covenant. Like, that's amazing. That's crazy.
That's what I felt when I went to the agency I was at. Like, I'd go through their servers and I'd be like, just clicking through, like, oh, you worked on this, and then like, I never saw this. This is amazing. And like, I didn't like it. They didn't go with it. Like, we can show it again later. Maybe they might use it for something else, for specialty packaging or something. And sometimes there's those opportunities, but there's it's like the what is it, like in Neil Gaiman had that thing of like the unwritten works of Shakespeare, right? Or like the stuff that was just his dreams, right? It's like that. There's like genius things out there that the public doesn't get to see. That's part of how it is. You have to kind of accept the fact that like not every idea is going to go through. So when you do see something amazing, if it's a single image and it's like a big property, that means it went through tons of gauntlets, and the fact that it got to your eyes as a regular, to the regular public is kind of amazing, and you gotta appreciate that,
Yeah, there are so many cogs in entertainment that anything that comes out good, you should just be mystified at how that many people and that many, voices like chiming in resulted in something like wildly cool. Because it does happen, but it's just like a kind of it's amazing that it does. So real quick, you know, like what I think of if I get like a job to do like a single image, one of my core things is like you were saying, Chris, is like trying to think of how do I convey this idea in a single image. Like that's the first thing that's hard to kind of do. Um, and that becomes like a real challenge where you're like, what's the story of this thing? And you only have one image to do it, you know? How do you kind of go about conceptualizing from like that idea? Like, well, let's say you have to do a film poster or something like that. I've seen also when you're working on, you know, singular illustrations, like you'll do like a t-shirt design for Thor and it'll go like 20 steps deeper than most people would, where you actually have like the language, like Norse, like mythology and languages and different signage and like sometimes even maps from the era or whatever, like integrated in the image. So I don't know, like what's the first thing? Let's say it's like something like, you know, I'm going to do a design of Thor or something like that. What is the thing that like what is the conceptual questions you're kind of asking or wanting to answer?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it's just having a good conversation with the client, right? To understand what their product is and what they're going for, and
Yeah.
you have to make sure it's a fit because like you might start talking and realize like I don't even get your depth, or this might not be your thing, you know. So you have to kind of understand. Hopefully, you're the right person for the project. Like for example, that Thor one was kind of something. That's just because me being nerdy, right? And me liking history and mythology and symbolism and language. And that one was just like, if I can reverse engineer what happened there, it was, I had started my own personal series, like with the thumbnail thing I sent you, that was like the Art Nouveau robots.
Yeah.
Which had the same concepts of like using language and symbols and trying to make those like the modern connections to the ancient past. And an art director's wife had seen my stuff at WonderCon or Comic-Con, which I'm going to just promote. Go to Artist Alley, be an Artist Alley, because that's where it helps to be seen. But somebody saw my artwork, and the art director just had recently acquired Marvel license. And that's where I designed my first licensed shirt, was this Storm design.
Yeah.
And it was funny because for that one, what I sent back was kind of like a more standard comic book type layout, where it didn't use the type of like historical cultural patterns and references that I had before. And the guy was like, oh, I like this, but we kind of like what you did before with this other stuff, right? So getting hired for something that you like is kind of, you know, like that's kind of the ideal point where you want to get at, where show your portfolio with what you want to get hired for. It's like, you know what, I do like this. It was more work, but I'm like, I kind of dig doing that type of stuff and packing as much like kind of like conversation points into an image. Like it, because I do once in a while, I'll do some cleaner design, more simplified stuff, but it's not my, it takes a lot of brain power for me to do that. I'm not a minimalist when it comes to a lot of my stuff. Like I like noodling and adding Easter eggs, right?
Yeah.
So that was kind of what I naturally gravitate towards. So the projects that I had worked on in the future were kind of like, I'd get hired for that. Yeah, I think a huge part of making sure that single image works is having an honest conversation about what they want, right? And what they're going for. And you have to really understand what they're, and kind of asking back and forth. It's like an interview, right? Like, do you mean this? Do you like this? And then you don't just show one image, you show a couple, right? I think like, I forget who it was, one of our teachers talked about this, like show them two or three ideas that you like, and then one that is like left field, like either completely different from what you're thinking, or something that you don't like. And hopefully they don't pick that one, because hopefully they like the ones that you think are good ideas, you know, where you'd be excited to go forward with, right?
Yeah, because you want something that they can say, we don't like that.
Right, yeah, right. yeah. No, I think I've heard that it's a psychological thing where you're kind of like working with the client to make sure that they feel good about making their decisions, and hopefully you're on the same page about it. You're right, that sucks, right? Good, yeah, we agree, and then let's go with these good ones, and let's refine.
There will be those odd times where they pick that one though.
Yeah,
right. And then that's when you're like, I don't know. It's like, maybe I shouldn't have got, you know, like.
Yeah, I tend to not like. I've started abandoning the weaker option just because I've had a few times where they picked the weaker option, and then I was like, why did I ever present that? So now I try to make sure they're all strong. But I do like the idea of one deviating quite a bit from like, so you have like the one that goes kind of way off, like maybe it's good, but it's just a totally different direction. That's a really, really salient piece of advice for people. I think, I don't know. I think with single image 2, you're probably like, let's see, I don't want to beat a dead horse on this because I do want to get into sequential stuff. But what other kind of components would go into like a sequential image? You've got your concept, right? And for the concept, that's going to be a lot of the time, especially if you're working with a client, that's going to be client led. Hopefully you're telling some kind of story with it, right? Ideally. What other considerations do you think like come into play when it comes to like a single image, especially like a poster or something like that?
I'd say much more graphic design, right? Which I feel like a bigger part of my job now is graphic design more than just illustration. Mm-hmm. Because sometimes we'll give them the illustration like option, but they'll want like images that they provide. You know, whether it's like a celebrity doesn't want their face drawn, they just want, here's the images their manager and everybody approved. So all you can use is this, you know.
That's always challenging too with celebrity heads, because it's like this head has to be an eighth bigger than this head, which has to be, you know, 2 times the size of this head.
All these, they've all negotiated that, right? And that's kind of somebody else's job, is to make sure like my client's not going to be, you know, shown smaller than this person. And if you look up the difference between like international posters, you'll see the difference. You know, like, you know, United States had this, but internationally they showed this, and it's like, oh, I see, they put more emphasis on this person or that person. It's like an alternate universe of the same movie that comes out, you know.
And that's why most of the movie posters you see in the marquee at the movie theaters all suck, and that's why there's a cottage industry of like art prints and stuff designed by artists, because there's people that actually care about that stuff that are just not the average people.
Right. There's an audience, you know, it's different from the standard. Yeah. Like it's not market led, it's more art led, you know, and then it's the different audiences, you know.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, because like there is kind of an influence on the mainstream that's come out of those kind of artist led.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. You kind of watched what Mondo did when it came out, and just like, we're doing horror movie posters nobody cared about. And then you had these, you know, like punk rock poster artists do like a Star Wars poster, and it's not something they've never seen before. And it's like, of course it's going to be new, because it wasn't led by committee, you know. Yeah. They let the artists kind of like, they genuinely love this stuff, let them have fun, and here's what they can make. It's nice to see that once in a while. And I think we just need to, you know, like keep encouraging these small things to keep allowing that to happen, because just like indie bands, right? Like they get too big and then it's like mainstream. It's like, well, they need new indie bands, you know, all the time.
No, it's kind of like a, you know, the typical kind of story of a city, where you have a city, it's got like a really cool kind of area that's maybe in a seedier area of town, you know, but like that's where all the cool clubs are, that's where all the cool music is, that's where all the cool stuff is, like all the cool shops, all the cool clothes, everything's there. And then you start having yuppies like kind of move into those areas, and suddenly the cool pub becomes like a yard house, and like, you know, the cool clothing store becomes like an Urban Outfitters, and like suddenly they just become these mega chain things. And then all of the yuppies, all of the yuppies like have to start looking to other places. They're like, oh, we got to go to Austin now. Let's go to Austin. That's where it's happening. I think that happens with everything, where the cool stuff is always going to be happening kind of in the underground, and then kind of becoming the mainstream, influencing the mainstream from there, you know? Okay. So this is something I think we can all chime in on. What was the most surprising thing, since we all started with single images, about working sequentially when you first took it on? Like some of the most surprising things about sequential art versus single art. Is that a weird question?
I'm just trying to. I have some opinions for that. One other people try. Yeah. Let's see. I think so. Storyboards. I realized I wasn't good at backgrounds, and I just wanted to draw like I think, you know, even before I actually did storyboards, I would like make my own, like, here's the Flash running around. And I realized, like, oh, I have to draw the background, you know, like I have to figure out like what the location, like I don't want to draw a building, like, oh, now we got a sidewalk, and just the broader range of stuff that you need to know how to draw from many angles, over and over, often, because especially for comics, you're more than just the close up of a head talking, just being able to have a library of locations and characters in your head that you can draw.
Unless you're doing Garfield. If you're doing Garfield, you can draw a counter and 2 characters, and you're probably good.
And him getting kicked out of a window says Garfield, and it's always the same. Yeah, it's.
And in most cases, you don't even need Garfield in the Garfield comic.
It's true. Oh, I love that.
Those memes. Yeah, it was
what is that site again? The one that only shows. What is it? Is it just Garfield without Garfield?
Yeah, I think it's something like that. Garfield without Garfield.
Yeah, so good.
No, I mean, I could chime in and I think just the thing that's great about comics, and there's obviously pluses and minuses. The fact that as anyone who's done comics can tell you, you put together a comic takes all this time. You go to the comic convention, you put your comic book up there for $5. Nobody wants it, but they're going to pay that print that took you not even a fraction of the time.
Right.
But they'll pay $20 for that. So that type of thing is discouraging. But
whereas they'll look at like a graphic novel and be like, $20? What, are you kidding me? I'll take that poster for $20.
Yeah, exactly. But
it's strange, yeah.
But it's basically like you're if you compare it to like motion picture, I mean, the amount of people and everything that it takes to put that together, whereas a comic artist, assuming you're a decent writer and artist, you can do all of that yourself. Yeah, I mean, you can literally create the worlds, you can do everything in the confines of those panels and everything, where if you at basically, I mean, obviously your time is gonna, there's so much time involved, but you don't have to have like a huge budget or anything to get your point across, to basically be director, be actor, be set design, everything.
Right. Yeah, production design.
Yeah.
Just requires fortitude and time, right? Yeah. That's all it takes is the will to do it, which is really hard. Yeah.
And that's why that's also why there's so many people that go to comics as sort of a proof of concept or design a comic to sell to like as a way to get it in front of like a motion picture studio or something, like, oh, here, this is what and why a lot of them option stuff from comics,
right, because it's already basically like a really high-end storyboard, because you have like the dialogue's already written, the basic ideas already there, and it's so much easier to pitch to a studio when you already have like, here's a completed thing, and especially if there's an audience that's like, well, these many people like it, and here's how to market it. I think like Oblivion was made that way. I think it was like a comic that was like purposely pitched with like people in mind, and it's interesting because like that the heavy lifting of watching the story come to life has kind of been done, right?
Yeah,
because that's where the heavy lifting happens, is like, what happens in the story, why do I care about it? And that's understanding like the difficulties of making sense of that, making it good. I think I learned so much trying to make comics. It's super hard, Like my first comic had no dialogue, because I'm like, I'm not a writer, I don't know how to write dialogue, and it's like also hard its own way. Like now I have to mime everything and make sure that works, and so, but I still found it easier than writing any words, and for me, my second comic, I actually used captions. Nobody talked yet, and in my third one, I feel like I graduated an actual comic with this captions, dialogue, and of course,
which is funny because like once you get comfortable with the dialogue and captions and stuff like that, then having to go from that to a fully silent comic sounds like a nightmare from hell.
I actually still like it.
I still mime everything, and it has to make sense perfectly.
But I feel like some part of me still likes it, because I'm a big, I'm like all like Charlie Chaplin and stuff. I went back and did a silent comic, and it was still challenging, but I kind of still like it because I'm not comfortable with my writing. Like I don't think I write dialogue that great, so I'm like, I feel more comfortable with just the visual medium personally.
Yeah.
And it's like I'm also have to like figure out like, is this any good? I don't know. I think it's definitely admirable when somebody can do all that, the writing and acting and storytelling.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I did for the Werewolves and Unicorns anthology. It was a silent comic, but it was based on a song lyrics. So, it was there, but you get to figure out how to kind of interpret that without any words, because for one, I didn't want to print the lyrics because they're copywritten and everything like that. But you could easily have looked up that song and like, oh, I can see what's going on, or you can try to figure out what's going on. And hopefully I pulled it off, but it's difficult to tell when how well you pull it off when there's no dialogue or anything.
That's the thing too with narrative, especially comics. It's really hard to know how well your audience receives it because you're not there when they're reading it usually. Like only if they come back to you and they can tell you like, I like this part, and also assuming that they're articulate enough to be able to tell them emotionally how they felt, and like not everybody can, so it's like some people love this book. I don't know how to put it into words. I'm not the author. You're the author. So that's another challenging thing is like how well do you know how well it worked.
That's actually kind of ties into, I think, the first big thing for me when I first started working seriously sequentially was the shock at how complex something relatively simple, if I just wrote it, becomes narratively in a sequence. Like if I say, like I walk into the kitchen, I'm scratching my head like out of curiosity, I grab a cup of coffee from the coffee maker, I sip the cup of coffee, and then I look pensively out the window. It's like that's very easy to describe. Now, if I have to break that down into a sequence, the biggest challenge I find with stuff like that is, what do I show? What do I not show? Like, what do I have to show to make every single action I just described clear? But then what do I edit out or include maybe excessive stuff? Because maybe I want, like, maybe when he's looking pensively out the window, I need a couple frames to show the pensiveness. Because how do you show pensiveness, right? There's all this beautiful challenge to working sequentially, because you're talking about movement, but you're still working flat and you're not working fully animated. And so it's kind of a weird thing where you're working sequentially and having to kind of work out like what are the beats you have to show for an action to be completely clear, and for an emotion to be clear. And so little things like that was what was surprising to me the first time I tackled working seriously sequentially, was how many little tiny things that seemed really insignificant when I first wrote them became like real headache, like sequential challenges to try to figure out, how do I show this? Like how do I convey this?
Because like, yeah, and like, and if you're the writer, you made the thing difficult for yourself, right? Like,
yeah,
because I think in the script for one of the Marvel movies, I think it was like Civil War, where they have that crazy battle where a bunch of stuff happens and they're fighting. Like in the script, it just says like, and this happens, and it just says they fight in the script, right? And then like somebody had to figure out, well, what happens? Like there's a whole team that does that, but that's like,
I want to be the screenwriter who gets away with that.
Right? Like, but the rest of it's airtight. So that's that. Yeah, you got to be that good where everything else is. Yeah. But because there's so much you can do with, you want to be obvious about that emotion. You can just do hand acting, right?
Yeah.
Or like a close up on something. There's so many choices. You're basically the director of this thing in a comic book, or storyboards, and sometimes they tell you, sometimes they don't. Like even with storyboards, I've worked with some directors who have a shot list and they tell me exactly like medium shot of this, close up of this thing. And then I have other actors who just like give me the script and they're like, okay, go. And like, basically I'm directing this, like I'll show them stuff and they'll say yes or no, but I have to come up with it,
prefer, Chris, of the two?
Oh, I mean, the shot list makes it a lot easier because there's so much less heavy lifting.
Yeah.
Because again, like same example of that script, it's like there's so many ways to interpret they're pensive,
Yeah.
Or like that those connecting from that verbal, just dialogue, written stuff to on the blank page, it's really hard. It can go a million different ways. It's a big part of the job.
Especially when you're talking about like multi-people scenes where you have a lot of actions, like mild actions happening between like 4 or 5 people. How to show that becomes such a challenge if it's not broken down. And I agree with you, Chris. I prefer if it's broken down. And right now I'm collaborating with another writer for like a pitch. And the first thing we're going to do before we pitch it, I'm kind of revising a screenplay that's like a film screenplay to be a script for a comic book. And in this script, it's the script I may not even like this script if it were from a client, but I'm literally taking it and breaking it down panel by panel. My panel one's this, panel that, and it's part of me just doing the preliminary work of making the comic, because for me to make it into a comic, I'd have to do that anyway. So it's just cutting through that and showing like a script that'll kind of define what those panels are. But it's also helping me work out before wasting time drawing,
right?
What those sequences are.
I think it's also like a sense of ownership. It's like, how much does this mean to me? If you're really excited about it, and if your name's going to be on it, like you don't mind doing the work. But if it's like a job where you're not going to get even screen credit or anything for it, you're just there to make sure the thing happens. It's like, please make it easy for me. Like, if it's like, you are also part of the team to birth this thing, then you don't mind doing that part of it, because it feels like also your baby that you're building and you're telling. But often for the jobs where they just need to show this thing, and especially the more dry and boring the commercial is, like, it's like, please just tell me how close up of the apple you want,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so that's an interesting thing to kind of tangent on for a second, which is with storyboards, you also have to kind of consider, not every client's going to have like a CG budget of like $1 billion. So a lot of what you're showing has to actually be able to be shot. So like,
right. And sometimes they realize that
into consideration.
And sometimes it's like kind of what they realize as it's being drawn. They're like, oh, that's right. There's a giant stadium. It's like, oh, we need extras for this. Like they'll think of, and that's what it's for, right? You save the time of like, oh, we need to budget this out with the production, and all the logistics is huge when it's like something where you have live action things. I think like usually if it's smart, they kind of, if they're experienced, they kind of know this as they're going in, and they know that like, the shot choices are made with that in consideration. That's a good director producer partnership, I think. But that's part of it. That's part of your job, is to show what is needed.
Yeah.
It's much cheaper to pencil on paper. No matter how much you charge, it's way cheaper to draw an explosion than to actually make one, right? Even in CG.
Yeah, and I've heard often they'll use storyboards in pitches for budgets as well. So like if they're trying to pitch like extra money for like a crazy explosion sequence, if they can show the producer or whoever's paying for it, like, hey, this is what it's going to look like. It's like, okay, yeah, you can have $50,000 or $100,000 or $1 million or whatever for that.
Yeah, I mean, no matter how good of a verbal storyteller you are, I feel like just that picture, that one image can be an interesting thing. Like Ralph McQuarrie concept art for Star Wars is what sold Star Wars. George Lucas's words on the script, I don't think could only do so much, no matter how much potential they had.
Yeah. Not everybody understands loving sand or hating sand as much, as Lucas.
I don't know if there was any saving that one. That was.
So Paul was mentioning repetition and redrawing in chats, and I think maybe that could be something. Like for me, that was the shock. Was like I thought I was really good at drawing, and then when you have to redraw a character, more than 4 times and be consistent, that's pretty tough.
Mm-hmm. That's like, I think some people make their own model sheets, for like if they make a character, just so they stay consistent. And I found that challenging for myself, is like what this person's supposed to look like, from different angles and stuff. Yeah, that's a part of it though, because like there's only so many ways to show something and keep it interesting. Although sometimes you don't need it though. I feel like, if it's dialogue heavy, like a comic strip, like you just need to focus on like one good character design and the fact that they're talking to another character is enough to carry the story forward, right?
Mhm.
Like Corey stuff, like Ye Olde Modernity, right? Like you don't have to redraw them each at different angles, because the importance is the dialogue, what the conversation they're having. I feel all the really good stuff is happening like on the character design itself, and then now you can focus on the interaction, right? So it's like there's different ways to go about it. Not everything needs crazy Michael Bay angles to make things
I reused a lot of art in that from panel to panel. That was
like, it's efficient, right? Yeah, because I think like you can focus more on the dialogue and what the conversation is. Yeah, I think that's I know our friend Ralph. He's been doing lots of boards too, and he says like he'll have a library in his storyboard repertoire to just have like to pull. If they just say like we need a lady that's a 3/4 angle, he just has a lady already like in his folders to like ready to go. Just drop it in. It's like it's his own drawing, so he can just like kind of like cut and paste and stuff. And I'm like, I don't know why I didn't do that, you know.
That's
I guess
like running like a little design firm on his own.
Yeah, because it's like if they don't care, if it doesn't need to be an original character, and which often they don't, you know, like sometimes they want a little bit of specificity, but often they just want a generic man, woman, child here, you know. And I think it's a time saver, especially when if you're not making a completely new thing. Like for, you know, I think for your own indie comics and stuff, I feel like you want something memorable. You want to kind of like put some time into the character design and stuff. But if it's just like we're gonna sell this, I don't know, this coffee or something, it doesn't matter what they look like as long as they're standing 3/4 angle right here, looking this way, you know. I think it's smart to kind of come up with these types of like hacks for yourself the longer you do it, because it's like, you know, saves time and it's efficient and it's your own drawing, right? So
So one of the other things that comes to mind with like sequential work is also kind of changing up viewpoint, like to kind of keep it interesting. How do you kind of approach that? Like, how do you avoid everything looking like a Dilbert cartoon? I'm calling out bad cartoonists today. It's awful. I'm like Dilbert, Garfield.
You haven't.
I mean, but those are so different.
Than, yet.
Right? Yeah. Strip comics are so different from, you know, like floppy comics.
Are they, Chris?
Even the fact that like the panels don't change shape is already a huge thing, right? Like I love breaking panels. I love, you know, the heads sticking out of stuff. I love like breaking frames or like not even having frames sometimes to like push things into the background, which I think that's one of the great like things that you could do with the language of comics is like, I think it used to be, you know, like everything has to be in a square. But even as early as like what's his name, Winsor McKay, like the one where he sneezes and the frame breaks. It's like that type of meta thing. It's always funny when I think it's fun to have characters break the frame if they're doing something that makes sense for it.
Yep.
So I mean, I don't know. I have a different method. I don't think I write. I mean, I haven't written a comic in years, but I mean, like when you actually write your comics out, right, dialogue and stuff. Whereas I think I just do a bunch of images that I kind of like scribble.
So when you're doing those images, are you doing? I mean, do you have like an arc or like how much writing? Do you have like an outline? Do you have like character beats, or are you just like, I just want to draw some images and we'll fill in the gaps of where the story goes?
It's much more like a loose outline, and then I start images where I have moments where I want to make sure I get to that point, you know, and then figuring out the details of like what they actually say to each other later. So I think I know what beginning, middle, and end.
I've seen some of your notes for your books. It's not like you're not writing stuff. You definitely write a lot.
Right, and I definitely do. Eventually there is a script, you know, like where I follow something. But I'm actually looking through my old comics to see if I have any like examples.
Yeah, because I think like for plot threads, I've seen you do little thread chains and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But it's usually kind of a mess, Chris.
Yeah, no, I have a messy. Oh, it's a blurry.
But they're like you are a really
it
clean thumbnail.
That fast. Yeah.
It doesn't
My
see your
thumbnails are pretty
face.
small. It doesn't.
Oh, I
it
think
only
it's because
sees
of the
faces.
blur effect
Okay.
on the screen. Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
I'm gonna take away the mystery.
Uh-oh. We call this the big reveal.
Big review. you might find a toddler back there. I actually don't know how to do this. Let me settings.
I don't.
You
I
go
don't
settings.
I don't think we're allowed to do it for you.
Oh, there's a
Let's see.
touch up my face.
Yeah, that's a creepy one. When you do touch up my face, it just makes you look like a.
There it is.
There we go.
There we go. I love it.
Can you? Yeah. we'll see.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, you can see the layouts I do here too, but oftentimes there's just stuff like this where like I just want a guy who's celebrating this thing, or like here's kind of what the old guy looks like, and it's much messier than this because this is already kind of composed into like a page that I could print out of the comic. But yeah, before it gets to this type of level of actually finishing it, it's very, very loose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And by the way, what comic is that, Chris?
So this is part 2 of my comic book, like circus comic story. It started with the Sunless Circus, and the easiest pitch is it's a robot acrobat that lives in the circus, but he dreams of running away to become an accountant. He wants to crunch numbers for a living because he's a robot. And it was only that first one was only 8 pages, silent, no words, nothing, and then eventually I kind of retconned everything to kind of make sense. Like, well, who built it? How did he get it? You know, so I basically asked questions that I didn't have answers to, and I told the story backwards, so it goes backwards in time. So you find out like who built him, where did he come from, and then where did the ringmaster come from, and why is he doing the things he's doing. And so in my head, I kind of have a bigger universe that's kind of expanded, and the books have doubled in size every time I've written them and gotten more complex. And I need some outside motivation to keep continuing because it's been on hiatus for a long time. Because comics, as you know, are very labor intensive, with not any immediate financial rewards. You know, like I take these conventions and I always love every single person picks one up. I'm like, this is my little baby. Let me know what you think. And there is something more satisfying about people's reactions to a sequential narrative story that you've written than a single image. Even though they're both your work, but there's so much more heart poured into the story because like I had to figure out who these characters are, and you know, there's more complex part of yourself that you put into a narrative because you know as a person you're living a life that's linear. You have a narrative that you live through, and an image is just an image. It may look cool, may be amazing, but it's a single representation of something that's kind of changing, like us. You know?
Yeah.
So I think like stories have more power. I think that can be long lasting.
Yeah, that's actually a really good way of putting it. I love that. So you start kind of that way, but I still think when it comes to like the way you put variety into your sequences, you know, like whether it's through like panel layouts that kind of differ or differing angles and perspectives. Thanks, Corey, for showing that. That's awesome. This is just showing some of Chris's stuff. By the way, go back to that fortune teller card.
Oh yeah. So you can I love little physical things. I love books, right? Like things you can hold in the page. I mean, I love the fact that digital, you can get out to more people easily and it can reach a bigger audience. But I think that the fact that you can hold a book and smell the paper, I don't know if it's just me, like comics had their own smell. You know, I got excited about it because you can add the ink that you can hold. So I like having things that are tangible, and these are scratchable fortune teller cards, and each of them has a little silly fortune. Some are, and I think like I forget what the odds are, but you can win a free comic. Some of them are like are winning cards too.
Scott might have to talk to you about that if he ever has like a scratcher episode.
Oh, you know what? Let's see if I can find it. Hold on. Wait, I'll let you guys.
Oh yeah. This is why I love Scott stuff too, because I love when he did the menu stuff. But I'm super excited about the other like Halloween, the special effects stuff. Yeah. So if you saw the other thing, it was like I added little stamps in the back of some of these comics that have like a blacklight active thing. So yeah, that's one of the things.
I love that. I love all those like kind of extra. It's like you like to throw in a lot of Easter eggs in your
Mhm.
art in your comics that kind of
Right.
reward
Yeah. Similar to
reward
my
a
single
second view.
images.
You know.
Right. Yeah. It makes it for a conversation point at conventions too, because I think like you want a good story too, but I think like this it fits with the fact that it's like a circus, and a circus is meant to entertain and be kind of like
Yeah.
something fun, so like a Cracker Jack box.
Yeah, I can't find them, but I had these Nintendo cards where you scratch off and you can actually play the game almost like a lottery ticket. And
Oh, that's neat.
That's something that I'd like to reproduce at some point. But
Yeah.
Well, you should talk to Chris because he figured out like a wacky way to do those scratchers.
You can, it's not no big secret. I feel like if nobody wants to do the trouble of, each of them is handmade. Basically, like you can buy those little silver dots, and so I just basically went to a company that makes playing cards usually. So playing cards are all like 52 different, different images. So instead, this one is like all the same image except the dialogue is different. So there's like 50 something, maybe there's 20 something. I didn't actually do the whole set. But basically had them print them as if they're playing cards and then individually add little silver dots on each of these things. And
can you get those in different sizes, or are they pretty much one size?
I saw it. Yeah, I think I reverse engineered. I found the dots at like Michael's or Hobby Lobby or something. And I'm like, what could I do with this? And so I built the cards around the dot.
Right.
But I think you can order them online because like they're just the 1-inch circles. But I'm pretty sure you can find anything online now. You can get them in different shapes and and sizes now. Yeah, but if you want to do it, I think it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. I wish maybe one day I'll have it manufactured, like actually get it all ready to go. But that's part of the charm of getting a homemade indie comic is that there's a lot of hand done work in yours.
Yeah.
Like I got Scott's original. Before it was a printed comic, The Young and the Dead. I have yours. You actually cut. Old school. You actually cut out the zombie hands.
Yeah.
Because I thought I was being meticulous by cutting a little keyhole shape, like a little knockout shape in the back, and I'm like, this is gonna be so cool. I have like the X-Acto knife and a hole punch. But Scott each one of his comics that he sent out, the zombie hands are like die cut, and I can tell like. Well,
by hand, yeah. Now I could do it probably in a Cricut, but back then it was all...
At the time, this was so many years ago. It's like this is, I still remember it. So hats off. It's a memorable amount of personal touch.
One of these days, I want to do something with those NFC dots, those little NFC chips.
What do those do?
What's an NFC chip? Yeah, it sounds remarkably scarily close to an NFT.
No, it's very simple. It's a very small. Basically piece of radio wire, and it broadcasts a passive signal. And so if you get your phone close to it, like if you've seen those dot cards, like Scott, you know what I'm talking about, right? Then you hold it up to your phone, then it'll open up a thing. And so
it's different from it's not a QR code.
I still got one here.
No, it's not a QR code because it uses the same technology that like Apple Pay uses. So if you put your phone near like a credit card reader, it broadcasts a signal that has the information of your credit card encoded on it. But this is like I have a sticker on my door in my office where like students can just put their phone near this white dot and it just takes them to schedule my office hours. But I've always wanted to do that as part of like, I don't know, like a hunt and find kind of illustration or something. And like you move your phone around in different spots and maybe it triggers animations or sounds or goes to specific websites or something.
That sounds, I gotta look into that because I love mixing technology with tangible real life interactions. That sounds really neat.
Yeah, I feel like you'd do something super cool with it, but yeah.
I mean, I turn to you. You seem to be on the cutting edge of technology and knowing this stuff. I feel like I'm always learning something new when I hear you talking about.
This is maybe the nerdiest way to find something out, but like the amiibos that you can get for the Nintendo Switch. Are based on NFC technology, and so you can reverse engineer the NFCs and hack the Switch by getting the stuff without having to buy the amiibos.
Oh, that's funny. I mean, kids will always find a way. They'll know how to, right?
Yeah, kids or 43-year-olds. Yeah, either way.
Right. Yeah. One of them. Somebody will get to it. It sounds. I remember. because as far as I got was QR codes. I remember in one of my illustrations, I hit a QR code in like a flower, and you scanned it with your phone, and then it would go to my YouTube, and there's like an animated version of that in illustration.
Yeah.
But I think now, with the advent of like AR tech and stuff, you could have interactive illustrations that would like probably have to be able to animate. Because like before, you had to like download a QR code reader. Now it's integrated with your camera, right? I feel like we'll eventually get to a point where the camera could probably interact with like AR type of tech. Like,
well, that's like Adobe Aero. Adobe Aero does that. So it's if you have the Adobe Capture app on your phone, then you can basically, the artist will go in and they'll say, if they point it at this scene, and it'll scan like surfaces to get like an idea of the perspective of the ground plane and everything.
Right. Yeah.
And distance. And then you can put augmented reality animations in there that are triggered by proximity or upon load plus delay. So like as soon as your phone goes up, it reads the scene and it's like, oh, this is a scene that's in our database. And so then it puts stuff in there, and as people like reach out with their finger or move their phone closer or further away or turn it, then you can have it react. You can have that animation react differently based on the proximity of the phone to it.
Wow.
This is what I was doing in the bar at Creative South while everybody else was drinking. So I had my water, my lemon water, and I'm like doing this stupid stuff with my iPad. Yeah.
I mean, this is so funny because it's like we're talking about, like single image versus animations. Like it could be both. You know what I mean? Like it's the multiple dimensional thing where they interplay off each other.
Yeah, for sure. And I think like if you're working on sequential stuff, especially like books or something like that, eventually you're going to have to tackle the challenges of like a single image that's dynamic and eye-catching every time you do a cover, right? So
exactly, I was gonna say, like every no matter what comic book you do, you still have to have a cover image, and that's a big deal because that's why cover artists make more money than an interior artist oftentimes. Is the cover is what people see on the shelf, and that design and the amount of inherent like gamble as to like, is this gonna sell? Like people make choices based on single images.
Yeah, I think, thinking about sequential challenges too, when you kind of start sequentially, one of the things that is strangely addictive of sequential comics is there's kind of endless possibilities for frames of reference when you're telling a story. And some of that could even exist within like storyboarding, if you have like a looser script where you really are kind of directing it. Where it's like, let's say you have like an argument sequence or something, right? And it's a couple arguing. You don't necessarily have to show just the couple themselves arguing. You could actually, like if they're washing dishes, like you have the actions that they're doing as they're having this. Maybe you shoot behind the faucet, like you could do low angles to kind of show tension, or you can tilt like the angle of the horizon so that it's got like a little bit of movement or again like instability to the scene, and realizing those possibilities is kind of overwhelming. I think still to this day when I'm working sequentially, it's one of the most fun things, but also one of the most overwhelming things because you have endless possibilities. But you also
that's
kind
the
of have
opportunity
to,
for style, though, right? I feel like that's part of how developing style is what you like to focus on. And I've noticed with certain directors that I've worked on, like with it off and on, like, oh, this person likes to use this, and he'll find any excuse to like use this image because clearly I can tell like he just likes seeing this thing,
Chris, are you talking? Did you work with Tarantino? Did you have to draw a bunch of feet? It's like, this person's barefoot. Focus on the feet. You're like, I don't want to draw any more feet.
Render those toes. Make sure I can see all 10 toes. Thankfully, no. It's for Henry Hobson. He's really great. He's a really great director and he's done lots of cool things.
Nice.
But I can tell like there's certain things that he he likes to go towards. And even like, really famous film directors too, like Christopher Nolan gravitates towards this type of shot. Or Denis Villeneuve likes these totems, like, and often has this type of focus. But yeah, that's, I think, like, out of those infinite number of decisions, that's, I think, is the beginning of style, because that's what you tend to like or gravitate towards.
Yeah. No, it makes a lot of sense. It's funny. I've talked to people about my love of Chris Ware, and when I fell in love with Chris Ware's stuff was when I saw Jimmy Corrigan wipe his nose.
Oh, right.
4
it's
panels
of
him just sitting, and he wipes his nose, and then he's sitting, and he's like drinking a soda at like a fast food joint. It's just a side shot of him just sitting still, and that shot goes for like 5 or 6 panels, just him sitting still, wiping his nose.
The fact that it's him, like, he decided to have you focus on him not doing anything but sitting there.
Yeah.
Right? Because he repeats it. And it's not just out of laziness. It's like he's making you focus on him just have the mundanity, or just kind of the, like, him not being active in this moment. There's one, I don't remember why I still think of a Chris Ware image where it's the men's room door opening.
Yes.
Do you know what I'm talking about? And I thought that was so weird. Like, I think the guy, he's going to the bathroom, but it doesn't even focus on the handle, or like what I would usually show, like opening the door.
Yeah.
But the angle changes from here to here.
It's just a sign. Just so it's like a little men icon, and then it just goes like that, and the door's open. It's so...
Yeah, I thought that was... Because it took me a while to appreciate his style and what he was doing with comics, because I think, like, it came from smashy capes and tights, superhero stuff, where I wanted to see the dynamic.
Man. Yeah.
Right. No, I love it. I still love it. But it's
too.
Like, yeah, I think that's where he's focusing on the marriage of design and illustration.
Yeah.
Where the design's not necessarily super rendered. It's kind of more simplified, basic shapes. But because of that, you can do things like that are like interesting and kind of unique to the medium.
Yeah, and I think that's something I definitely like to incorporate, is like kind of repetition in certain spots to kind of draw things out, because I love that kind of that tactic. But that being said, if you do a book and it's mostly repetition, I mean, there's a couple books that are weird examples of like breaking the rules on this, like Harold and the Purple Crayon, one of my favorite, kids books ever. Kind of breaks this rule, because I think throughout the entire book you just see Harold from the side. I don't think his face ever really points any other direction. It's always a side shot of Harold, and you're always looking at things from the side. Like, you're never looking at them from above or from like a different angle. It's always like just you're kind of watching Harold go through this whole book with the purple crayon. But most books, like if you think of like a Sendak book, or like a classic children's book, or a great comic, most books will kind of change point of view a lot. And I think the reason is it's hard to pull off a book like Harold and Purple Crayon and have it be interesting, like, where it's just the same exact viewpoint the entire story,
I think for kids' books, it kind of helps to be horizontally oriented, like landscape, where you're watching just... Because, I mean, even in Sendak stuff, it's not like he goes to like a top-down view or anything, right? Like, he doesn't do filmic stuff.
That is true. You are kind of watching a stage.
You're kind of watching, it could be a stage play. You're kind of watching the kid walk, and I think a lot of it's just the monster design, and like, now I'm gonna eat you up. Like, it's, I think that's maybe just because we live on the earth that we see landscape mode most of the time.
Yeah.
Although that's changing. Although now that I can make an argument, people being on their phones might be starting to change how we view landscape versus portrait, because so much video is now in portrait mode.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing.
Natural.
But people who use portrait mode on video are evil people.
I still feel that way, but I am noticing that there's more and more content that is portrait mode.
Right.
It's frightening.
I know that might be a hill I die on. I think
I'm with you, Corey. I think I just love
much.
I love cinematic visual storytelling too much that, like, unless you're changing it up and putting it in a comic frame, you change it with meaning, right? I think
right.
Unless maybe you're filming a rocket launch or something where you actually are going up and down. I don't want it to be in
but like when also most portrait video is also like either intentionally bad or just people don't know how to do better. Like, it's kind of like that, the crappy green screen that we were making fun of before, or TikTok videos where it's like people dancing moderately well or kind of boringly to 30 seconds of a song. And it's just like, this is what passes for entertainment. Like, I don't know. I feel like I'm witnessing the devolution of society with vertical video.
I have no idea what you're talking about with this crappy green screen thing, Corey.
I think it's working
chilling here.
Josh has teleported
in my
himself
vacation
somehow
home.
to this.
I love that you have a warm toned background and like a blue tint glow.
Yeah, I'm not feeling so great, so that's why I'm kind of blue. But
I'm slightly radioactive.
Now, what part of the world are you,
You look
in?
like a
daylight
force
out.
ghost, right?
Yeah, it's daylight because I'm talking to you guys from Australia. So
Right.
yeah, this is my Australian abode.
I mean that is just a slight step below like renting a mansion and a Lamborghini so that you can pretend like you're rich on YouTube pre-roll videos. Let me tell you how to make $1 million.
How you doing?
We should do a series of like Artcasters spin-offs where we have bad blue screening like this, but there's like Lamborghinis behind us, and it's like, you want Lambos like this, you gotta talk to the Artcasters, and it's like your thumbs disappearing.
I can't give details, but I'm actually doing a series of videos soon, not for my channel. No one here will ever see it, but a series of videos where we're renting Airbnbs as our setting so that it looks like it's a better situation than it is.
That's funny. It's all a grand illusion, right?
Yeah, we're just doing all these shoots and we're just going to do them in Airbnbs. It's going to be awesome.
That's funny. Yeah.
Oh, hey guys, I just arrived back home. How's it going?
Here's my team working in my kitchen these extras that I've hired in this thing. But let's keep walking so that we can walk by the pool. And then they sell you their 1-page book on how to sell books to idiots.
Mm-hmm. That is the funniest thing of the success, the one step to success social media marketers who they're like, you mail away to me, like pay $10,000 and I'll send you the 5 exclusive videos that'll change your life and tell you how to make a fortune. And then it ends up being make videos that tell people to buy your videos that tell them like,
which it's like I think I was made the comparison. It's like the gold rush, where you can actually, I think digging for gold is not the same as making something new creatively, but at least you're putting in the work, right? But the people that made a guaranteed amount of money were the people that sold shovels, right? The shovel, and they're just selling you the shovel. Right. It's like they're not actually teaching you. Like you actually might find gold with that shovel, but if you're selling this thing, it's like, yeah, I think it's unfortunate when those people get so much more attention. And I see it. I mean, I get marketed that stuff too on my feed. And I'm like, it's very tempting because it's all those things like make this easier, like how to draw this easier, and here's the 5 steps, and they break down and the algorithm pushes that. So it's like I think that makes it hard for good new creative content to be seen. It's unfortunate
people don't really like being told this is back-breaking work that you will do for decades of your life until you feel competent. And at that point in time, then you still won't feel like you've arrived, but people will start paying you money for it.
Right. Yeah, it's the hard truth of it. It's like they don't want to hear that because they want to still be able to, have dreams. And it's like the unfortunate part is just like working out or whatever. It's like, or health. It's like, it just takes a lot of effort, consistency.
No, that's not true, Chris. There's this protein drink that I've been having lately.
If you don't stop running on the treadmill, then I'm going to jump in this pool.
And you can go to joshuakimball.com to find those protein drinks.
Here's the 5 secrets. Yeah,
I actually have
nutraceuticals, Chris. Nutraceuticals.
I actually have heard that certain artistic hoodies will help you lose weight, be taller, and get goals.
I have heard that. That's true. You'll never be cold again. I don't know. It's like every ambition you ever had will be solved if you had.
I did find it strange that before you were wearing that hoodie, you had no house, you had no wife, no children, nothing, and now you have a house, a wife, and children, all because of that hoodie.
I have left the family of wolves.
Not saying they're connected, but I'm just saying it's weird.
You're just saying,
I need to make a new course on comics, but this time not go through 72 episodes of all the stuff you have to do even to get into comics. It's got to be, it's super simple. All you have to do is do this and everything. It's not hard at all.
If you do that, please include
Scott,
AI
I do
generated
think
images.
you should do a parody video. Yeah, and you need to do that as a parody video, green screened in front of a bunch of Lamborghinis, and just be like, you want Lambos like this,
just
play
it
straight though, right? Like this, it's like a bunch of. It's like
comic books. Comic books are the best. Comic books are the most lucrative, best paying industry that's out there. It's totally untapped. Let me tell you how you do it. You get an AI generated image. You don't even need a story. Just go in there and you just tell it to do a bunch of cool images, and then you are done. Print it, KDP. You're out.
I usually don't try to. I usually try not
Johan
to
said
discourage
Michael
people.
Jordan is the Chris Kawagiwa of basketball.
I do have a fragrance coming out pretty soon. So this is if you wear it, it'll make it a successful medium.
I want the images that I just got in my mind of the commercial that you're going to shoot for that fragrance. It's just awesome. Just you shirtless, like mostly submerged in a mirror lake water. Slow pans past you with like silks blowing in the wind. Yeah, it's gonna be good. It's gonna be good stuff.
I mean, we'll employ all the tactics we talked about. Storyboard this; it can make it work.
Right. I love it.
And you have to name it. You have to name it something ridiculous.
So we can budget it out. Yeah. So
CK's already taken, so I'll think of something else.
I have a quick question for everybody toward the end of this. So if somebody is watching and they're just starting working sequentially, whether it's doing a book or a children's book or storyboards, anything like that, maybe an animation, what is one thing that you, maybe more than one thing, that you would tell yourself when you started working sequentially seriously now that might be helpful?
I'm not sure I followed that entire question. That was
so if you from the past
were
just starting out at working sequentially, what would you now tell your old self about sequential work that would give you a leg up on the competition?
I'll go first. Get the amazing comic book world builder at circworks.com. It'll help you speed up the comic book process.
I have that book. Yeah, for comic books, it totally helps. Yeah, I feel like it's a great template. Because I think, like, I was trying to learn. Well, I don't think I studied comics the way I should have because when you're, like, just enjoying them, you're not analyzing. You're just, it's like watching a movie and without analyzing. You're just, if it works, it's amazing. But you only notice when it doesn't work. You know, like, it's one of those things you have to make a concerted effort to pay attention to. So having a template like the How to Make Comics guides really breaks it down for you and actually like gives you a template to like figure out, what do I draw on this panel? How do I, ask questions that are good for answering. So I'm gonna go with Scott's recommendation. Buy Scott's book and go learn how to make comics. I feel like, but yeah, again, learning. I think the first thing I said was learning how to draw a bunch of different stuff. And enjoying the process, I guess, of repetitive things, getting into the satisfaction of having made a thing that makes sense in order.
Yeah,
I like
just that you have to love it because it is a commitment. Like I got a comment on one of my videos. It was like I think it was a 20-minute video, but it was the introduction to my series, Making Comics 101, and they're like, come on, man, get on with it, or something like that, or speed it up, or something. I'm like, if you and I don't want to like push anyone away from doing comics, but my comment back was like, if you don't have the patience to sit through this, maybe comics isn't your thing,
Yeah,
it's totally true.
Like,
if you can't,
man, I have to sit here for 30 minutes. Oh, and you're like,
you can't passively watch a thing. To actively sit down at a desk and be dedicated to this thing for a long period of time, it's going to take a long time. It's just part of the grind, right?
Yep. I love it. Okay, I think this is weird, but this ties into Chris's first comic that he talked about making that was silent. I think I would tell myself that you have to make it work as if it's silent.
Yeah.
That would have saved me a lot of work early on. It's like, forget the dialogue, forget the text, just make it work, make it make sense, make the story make sense with no text, and then you're gold when you have text.
That's good advice.
Yeah.
I'm going to steal that.
Mm-hmm. Corey,
I think I would probably say every panel doesn't have to like be some groundbreaking reinvention of the medium. Like I have this drive in me to like, I'm going to subvert every rule. I'm going to subvert every expectation. And so like, it's like sometimes there's some bread and butter stuff because it works really well and it's like solid and you should do that. I feel like a lot of the stuff that I was doing early on was like Michael Bay, you know, where it was like every single shot needs to be this giant, expansive, you know, 15 depth, you know, panning tracking shot or whatever. And it's like sometimes, you know, just having a 1 up, 2 up, you know, 3/4 medium shot, like those are some solid things. And so like I feel like a lot of the stuff that I was doing, I was just like this is gonna blow everybody's mind, and then it just made it like I'm kind of confused. I'm not sure which panel to read next, or you know, whatever. So I, you know, learn the foundational stuff, and you know, break the rules every once in a while. You know, subvert every once in a while, but like do that at poignant moments rather than, you know, all throughout.
Yeah, I think I did the same thing starting out too. I wanted everything to be special, but if everything is, you know, like extraordinary, then
Right.
nothing is, right? Like you have to have those quiet moments in order to drive home the important parts, and you save that. You put it in your pocket when you're like, but it requires discipline. You're like boring, but you got to do it, and then do the thing where it counts.
Yeah.
And that's where I think there's so much more impact for narrative storytelling, sequential.
Yeah, and also tying into what Corey was saying too, I think I've seen and I've experienced this too, where personally for myself when I've done sequential stuff, a lot of comic artists in particular fall really in love with the kind of thinking outside of the box and very like dynamic paneling. And that works. Like Chris does a lot of dynamic paneling. It works in his comics. But keep in mind when you're starting, you can lose the plot with dynamic paneling. So make sure, like I would also, I think just tying into what Corey was saying, sometimes weirdly enough, just sticking to like a 6-panel grid when you start is not a bad way to go, and then break the grid as you go. But like, you know, if you can't make it work in a 6-panel grid, you're going to have trouble making it work in like a complete dynamic composition where the panels are really hard to follow and stuff like that. So, you know, and you can even see it looking at artists like Sam Keith, who's known for his dynamic paneling. You look at his early stuff, he started with a grid because it's like you make it work sequentially first, then you can start getting wild, you know. But I've definitely seen a lot of early comics that fail pretty epically with dynamic paneling because you have no idea where to go. So you're like reading conversations backwards and like all of that stuff. So when you see like
it's
actually,
like a shared language, right? It's like you kind of, even though it's basic, it's like we've all kind of learned how to read by a Z, like in the United States, you know, it might be different in Japan, but it's like we've learned to kind of follow our eyes and read this way. So before you go reinventing the wheel, like, well, we all know how to read this, so at least get that down right before you pull off something crazy, right?
Yeah, and honestly, pick up Chris's books too, because they're really good examples of kind of like a good balance between dynamic paneling and also traditional paneling, and flow very easily. Like when you read them, and like again, a lot of them silent, and a lot of them not. But point being, pick up Chris's comics, which you can. Chris, can people order those online too?
Yeah, they're on our Kitten Rivets Etsy shop.
I love it.
Yeah, you can find them there.
So pick those up on Kitten Rivets Etsy shop. All right. Any final thoughts before we kind of close it out? No? Okay. We'll make rounds, and I'm also kind of ending a little bit early because I know Chris has a kid.
She's already in bed. We're gonna. Yeah. I'm getting a little of a baby shark in the background. Sorry.
No worries. Baby shark's fine. Man, did I have to hear that a lot. back in the day. All right, so we'll just close out by letting everybody know where to find us. So, Corey, where can everybody find your stuff?
You can find my stuff at CoreyKerr.com.
Nice,
So.
especially if you guys are cold and looking for nice warm hoodies like Corey himself is wearing. Maybe improved lives from those said hoodies. You know?
Not maybe. That is a guarantee that I will not back.
I love it. All right.
Talking about conversation starters, his images are amazing. I don't know if you dig into every little detail in his stuff. It's like, yeah, talk about like things to mull over as you're like, hey, where'd you get that? There's amazing concepts and ideas that you put into each one.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I tried. I like doing that. I was kind of sitting quietly as you were talking about all those little Easter eggs, and I was like, yeah, I feel that.
Yeah, I get it. I see your Easter eggs. I see you. I see you.
I love it. Hey, Chris, where can everybody go to check out your stuff? Obviously, they should pick up your comics at Kit and Rivet, but where else should they go?
So you can go to chriskawagiwa.com. That is my portfolio, but you can find links to my comics and social media there. Sketchboy01 on everything else on Instagram. And
love it.
That's about it.
I love it. Follow Chris, guys. Chris, thanks again. Always fun having you on.
Good to see you guys. Yeah.
Nice. So I'm Joshua Kemble. You're on my channel. So if you haven't yet, hit subscribe, hit the bell so you get notifications when I'm about to go live, and consider picking up 2 stories for Jacob's Apartment if you want to see examples of sequential narratives that are slice of life and autobiographical. And Scott, lastly, where can everybody find you? And then after that, how do people keep track of this crazy train that is the Artcasters?
Yeah, so first of all, you can find my stuff at my on my YouTube channel, CircWorks Art Labs on YouTube. I'm reverse engineering classic nostalgia from the 70s, 80s, and 90s, putting my own unique spin on it. And it's just a totally fun maker channel vibe. Definitely check that out. Also, you can go to my website at circworks.com. I've got tons of digital products that you can there's one that's free. You can download that for free, and then there are other ones that are a little more robust that you can purchase, and that's just going to help speed up and make more efficient comics, better comics, and everything like that. And you can also find my comics, Young and the Dead. Issues 1 through 5 are currently available. I'm working on issue 6, the final issue. But other than that, this show, the Artcasters, do the show every single week, typically, without fail. But it can rotate between channels. It can be on different times, different days. We have different guests. If you want to know who the guest is going to be, if you want to know what location Josh is going to be, it could be a really swanky house with a grand piano there in the daytime in Australia. You're never going to know what you're going to get. But the easiest way to figure out when everything's going down, all that stuff, is just to join our mailing list. And we don't spam you or anything like that. All we do is usually at least 30 minutes before we go live, we'll send out a newsletter letting you know whose channel's going to be on, who the guest is going to be on, and all that kind of stuff, because YouTube doesn't always notify people. So that's the best way to do it. So join our mailing list.
All right, guys, it's like lunch in Australia, and I have to work on a concerto on my my grand piano here.
Got to put a shrimp on the Barbie, huh?
So thanks to everybody in the chat. We'll see you on the next Artcasters. We appreciate you guys. And if you haven't yet, hit that like button. All right, see you guys. Bye.
See ya.